He was just another passenger on the crowded Carnival Elation until Sophia heard his voice cut through the karaoke night chaos. And suddenly, her carefully planned solo healing cruise became something she never saw coming. But when she discovers he might not be the single, available man she thought he was, will one magical week at sea turn into the heartbreak she was trying to escape? When Sophia booked this cruise 3 months ago, she thought she had it all figured out. 7 days of self-discovery, journaling by the pool, and proving she could be perfectly happy alone. She never imagined that one voice would change everything. The divorce papers were still fresh when she made this crazy decision. Her sister Emma had been pushing her for weeks. "You need to get out there, Soph. Stop hiding in your apartment, eating ice cream, and watching sad movies." So here she was, dragging one small suitcase onto the biggest ship she'd ever seen. The Carnival Elation looked like a floating palace. Bright blue pools sparkled in the Texas sun. Families ran everywhere with screaming kids covered in sunscreen. Couples held hands and took endless selfies. She felt like an alien watching from another planet. Her room was tiny but cute. She unpacked her new bathing suits and summer dresses, trying to feel excited instead of scared. The ship's horn blasted 3 times, and they started moving away from Galveston. She rushed to her little window and watched the land get smaller and smaller. The first day was harder than she expected. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going and what they were doing. She ate lunch alone at the buffet, trying to look like she chose to sit by herself. A family at the next table kept staring at her with sad eyes, like she was some lost puppy. By dinner time, she was ready to hide to her room and order pizza, but she'd promised Emma she would try. She put on her favorite blue dress and forced herself to go to the main restaurant. The server seated her at a table for 2, and she spent an hour pretending to read her phone while eating alone. Maybe this whole trip was a huge mistake. Maybe she wasn't ready to be the kind of person who could travel alone and feel confident about it. Maybe she should have just stayed home and learned to be okay with her quiet, predictable life. But then something happened that changed everything. The karaoke singer's voice hit the first note, and every conversation in the Alchemy bar stopped. 2 days into the cruise, Sophia had finally found her rhythm. She claimed a corner table in the quietest bar on the ship, far from the crowds and chaos. Tonight was karaoke night, and she was perfectly happy watching other people embarrass themselves while she sipped her strawberry margarita. Most singers were pretty terrible. A teenage girl screeched through a Taylor Swift song. 2 drunk guys murdered a Beatles classic. An older woman tried opera and made everyone wince. Sophia was starting to think about going back to her room when a new singer walked up to the microphone. He was tall with messy dark hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple white shirt that looked expensive. When he picked up the microphone, he didn't look nervous like the others. He looked confident. "This one's for anyone who's ever had to start over," he said into the microphone, his voice deep and warm. Then he started singing "Wonderful Tonight," and Sophia's drink nearly slipped from her hands. His voice was smooth like honey, but with just enough roughness to make it interesting. He wasn't performing for the crowd. He was sharing something real and personal. The entire bar went quiet. Even the bartenders stopped making drinks to listen. But the strangest part was that he kept looking directly at her. Not in a creepy way. In a way that made her feel like he was singing just for her. When the song ended, the whole place exploded in cheers. But he didn't seem to notice. He was still looking at her with a small smile that made her stomach flip in ways she'd forgotten were possible. Oh no, this was not part of the plan. The plan was healing and self-discovery and definitely not falling for some random guy on a cruise ship. He started walking toward her table, and Sophia's heart hammered so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. "That was either really brave or really crazy," he said, sliding into the empty chair across from her. "I'm Alex, and I'm hoping you'll say brave." "Sophia," she managed to whisper, "and definitely brave." When he smiled at her answer, she knew her quiet, safe week of healing had just become something completely different. But she had no idea how different things were about to get. By the 3rd morning, Alex had already texted her before breakfast, and her heart did that flip-flop thing every time his name lit up her phone. "Want to race me down the Twister slide?" his message read, followed by a challenge emoji that made her grin like a teenager. 20 minutes later, she was screaming with laughter as they shot down the twisting water slide together, her competitive side coming out in full force. Alex beat her by half a second, but when he helped her out of the splash pool, his hands lingered on her waist just a moment too long. "Best 2 out of 3, he asked, water dripping from his dark hair. "You're on," she said, surprising herself with how playful she felt. The buffet lunch turned into a food adventure as Alex convinced her to try things she'd never eaten before. Escargot, which made her scrunch up her nose. Raw oysters that made her shudder. But then he fed her a piece of chocolate cake, and the way he watched her face light up made her stomach flutter in the best way. "You have chocolate on your lip," he said softly, reaching out with his thumb to brush it away. The touch was gentle, but it sent electricity shooting through her entire body. That afternoon in Progresso, walking through the busy marketplace filled with bright fabrics and the smell of grilled corn, Alex stopped at a jewelry stand. The elderly woman behind the counter smiled as he picked up a simple silver bracelet with a tiny anchor charm. "For someone special?" the woman asked in accented English. "Very special," Alex replied, looking directly at her. As he fastened the bracelet around her wrist, his fingers were warm against her skin. The anchor felt smooth and cool, but her pulse was racing underneath it. "Now you'll have something to remember Mexico by," he said. But she knew she'd remember everything about this moment. The way the sun caught the silver, the gentle pressure of his fingers, the sound of mariachi music drifting from a nearby restaurant. That evening, they found themselves alone in one of the ship's hot tubs. The deck party had ended hours ago, and most people had gone to bed. Steam rose around them like a warm hug as they sank into the bubbling water under a sky full of stars. "Tell me something nobody else knows about you," Alex said, moving closer until their shoulders touched. She thought for a moment, feeling braver than usual. "I used to want to be a travel writer. I had this dream of visiting every country and writing about the adventures." "What stopped you?" "Life, I guess. Marriage. Playing it safe." She turned to look at him. "What about you? What's your secret dream?" "I wanted to learn a tango," he admitted with a sheepish grin. "Really well, like in the movies." She laughed, but not in a mean way. "That's actually really sweet. My ex-wife thought it was silly," he said quietly. "Well, your ex-wife clearly didn't know what she was missing," she replied, and the way his eyes lit up made her chest feel warm and tight. As they talked deeper into the night, sharing stories about their childhoods, their fears, their hopes for the future, she realized something scary was happening. This wasn't just vacation fun anymore. This was real feelings, the kind that followed you home and changed everything. When Alex reached for her hand under the water, intertwining their fingers, she didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed back, letting herself fall into whatever this was becoming. The perfect bubble burst the next morning when 2 words destroyed everything: his wife. Standing in line for pancakes at the breakfast buffet, trying to decide between blueberry and chocolate chip, she overheard 2 women chatting behind her. "Did you see the drama at guest services last night?" the first woman whispered. Some woman was crying about her husband spending time with another passenger. Her stomach dropped like she'd fallen off the ship. "Really? Which husband?" the second woman asked, clearly hungry for gossip. "The good-looking one with dark hair. Someone said his wife caught him with that blonde girl who's always alone." Blonde girl who's always alone. That was her. Her hand started shaking so badly, she almost dropped her plate. Wife. Alex had a wife. All those moments, the bracelet, the hot tub, the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. Had he been lying the entire time? She felt sick to her stomach, like she might throw up right there in the buffet line. When Alex appeared at their usual table by the window, that same gorgeous smile on his face, she wanted to run and hide. The anchor bracelet felt heavy on her wrist, like a chain instead of a gift. "You look pale," he said, setting down his coffee and reaching across the table toward her hand. "Are you feeling okay?" She pulled her hand away before he could touch her. "I'm fine, just tired." But she wasn't fine. She was angry and hurt and embarrassed all at the same time. How could she have been so stupid? Of course, a man like Alex wasn't really single. Of course, there was a catch. Maybe I'll skip the beach today, she said, avoiding his eyes. I think I need some rest. The confusion on his face looked real, but then again, maybe he was just a really good actor. Maybe this was what he did every cruise. Find some lonely woman and make her feel special while his wife looked the other way. Are you sure? I was looking forward to exploring Costa Maya with you, he said, and the disappointment in his voice almost broke her heart. Almost. I'm sure, she said firmly, standing up from the table. I need some time alone. She spent the entire day on the beautiful Mexican beach, but it felt like torture. Every couple walking hand in hand reminded her of what a fool she'd been. Every laugh from other tourists made her feel more alone. The white sand was perfect, the water was crystal clear, and the sun was warm on her skin. It should have been paradise. Instead, all she could think about was Alex's hands on her wrist as he put on the bracelet. The way he'd said she was special. The electricity she'd felt when they touched. Had any of it been real? As the afternoon wore on, she found herself touching the anchor charm, wondering if she should just throw it in the ocean. But something held her back. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was stupidity. When she returned to the ship that evening, she saw Alex at the rail where they'd first really talked. He was alone, staring out at the water with his shoulders slumped forward. For a moment, she almost went to him. Then she remembered the words, his wife, and forced herself to walk the other direction. She had to protect her heart, even if it was already too late. The truth hit her like a lightning bolt when she least expected it. Walking back to her cabin after another lonely dinner, trying to avoid the karaoke bar where she knew Alex might be, she heard voices coming from around the corner near the elevators. One of them was definitely Alex, but he sounded tired and frustrated. Sarah, we've been over this 100 times, he was saying. The divorce papers are signed. We're done. Divorce papers? Her feet stopped moving, and she pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. But we were happy once, a woman's voice pleaded. We could be happy again. That's why I booked this cruise, to remind you of what we had. What we had ended 2 years ago, Alex replied firmly. You know that. We both tried everything. Counseling, time apart, even this trip. But some things can't be fixed, Sarah. Sarah, not his current wife, his ex-wife. Her brain felt like it was spinning. She'd been completely wrong about everything. Alex wasn't married. He was divorced, just like her. The woman at guest services hadn't been his wife. She'd been his ex-wife, trying to win him back. I see the way you look at that blonde woman, Sarah continued, and there was hurt in her voice. You never looked at me like that, even in our best times. That's not fair, and you know it, Alex said quietly. We had good times, Sarah, but they weren't enough to build a marriage on. And yes, I've met someone who makes me feel things I didn't think I could feel anymore. Someone who makes me want to be better. Her heart started beating so fast she thought it might burst out her chest. He was talking about her. So that's it? 5 years of marriage, and you're throwing it all away for some vacation romance. Sarah's voice was getting sharper. I'm not throwing anything away, Alex said, and now he sounded angry too. You threw it away when you decided work was more important than our relationship. When you canceled our anniversary dinner for the 3rd year in a row. When you stopped trying to fix what was broken between us. There was a long silence, and then she heard Sarah crying. I'm sorry, Alex said more gently. I know this hurts. It hurts me too. But we both deserve to be with someone who makes us truly happy. That person isn't each other anymore. The elevator dinged, and she heard footsteps moving away. She waited a full 5 minutes before peeking around the corner, but the hallway was empty. Her mind was racing. Alex was single. He'd been telling the truth about everything, and she'd spent the last day and a half avoiding him based on a misunderstanding. But now she felt like an idiot. How could she face him after acting so cold and distant? How could she explain why she'd suddenly stopped talking to him without admitting she'd been eavesdropping on other people's conversations? She touched the anchor bracelet on her wrist, the one she'd almost thrown away that morning. Maybe it wasn't too late to fix this mess. Maybe she could find a way to apologize without looking like a complete fool. Or maybe she'd already ruined everything, and Alex would never trust her again. The final night's deck party was in full swing when she finally found the courage to face him. Colorful lights were strung across the entire Lido deck, and a live band was playing upbeat songs that had people dancing everywhere she looked. Couples were spinning around the makeshift dance floor, kids were running around with glow sticks, and the whole ship felt like one giant celebration. But she couldn't enjoy any of it. Not when she knew she'd messed up so badly. She found Alex standing alone at the back of the ship, away from all the noise and lights. He was leaning against the rail, staring out at the dark ocean, and something about his posture looked sad and defeated. Her stomach was doing backflips as she walked toward him, trying to figure out what to say. How do you apologize for being an idiot without actually admitting you were spying on people? Beautiful night, she said softly, coming to stand beside him at the rail. He turned, and the surprise on his face quickly turned into something more guarded. Sophia, I wasn't sure I'd see you again. The hurt in his voice made her chest ache. She'd done that to him. She'd made him feel like he'd done something wrong, when really, she was the one who'd jumped to the worst possible conclusion. I owe you an explanation, she said, gripping the rail so tight her knuckles were white. About yesterday. About why I've been avoiding you. You don't owe me anything, Alex said quietly. If you're not interested, just say so. I'm a big boy. I can handle rejection. That's not it at all, she said quickly, turning to face him fully. I heard something at breakfast yesterday about you having a wife, and I panicked. His eyebrows shot up. A wife. I know how it sounds. I know I should have just asked you directly instead of assuming the worst. But my divorce was really messy, and I guess I'm still scared of getting hurt again. Alex was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him processing what she'd said. The music from the party drifted over them, something slow and romantic that made the moment feel even more intense. Sarah, he said finally. Someone saw me with Sarah? She nodded, feeling her cheeks burn with embarrassment. I figured that out eventually, when I overheard you two talking by the elevators. You heard that conversation? Now he looked embarrassed too. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just walking back to my room, and I heard voices. She trailed off, realizing how creepy that sounded. But instead of being angry, Alex actually smiled a little. So you know the whole messy story now. My ex-wife who thought a cruise might save our marriage. My failed attempt to be the nice guy and let her down easy. I know you're divorced. I know you're single. And I know I'm an idiot for not just talking to you about it. The band started playing a slow song, and all around them, couples moved closer together on the dance floor. Alex held out his hand to her, and her heart started racing again. Dance with me? He asked. And maybe we can start over? She took his hand without hesitation, letting him pull her into his arms as they began to sway to the music. Being close to him again felt like coming home. Dancing with Alex felt like the whole world had stopped spinning, but reality crashed back when he whispered the words that changed everything. I live in Seattle, he said softly against her ear as they swayed to the music. You're in Denver. That's 1,200 miles between us. Her stomach dropped. In all the excitement of making up and finding each other again, she'd somehow forgotten about the most important problem of all. This cruise would end tomorrow morning. They'd go back to their separate lives in different cities, different time zones, different worlds. I know, she whispered back, trying to keep her voice steady. That's not exactly easy, he continued, and she could hear the worry in his voice. The song ended, but they didn't let go of each other. Around them, other couples were laughing and taking selfies, completely unaware that her heart was breaking all over again. So what do we do? She asked, looking up into his eyes. Alex was quiet for a moment, his hand still holding hers. I don't know, he admitted. I've never felt this way about someone I met on vacation. I don't know how this works. They found a quiet corner of the deck, away from the party noise, and sat down on one of the padded benches. The ocean stretched out endlessly in front of them, dark and mysterious under the starlight. Tell me about your life in Denver, Alex said. Your job, your friends, your family. Help me understand what I'd be asking you to give up. So she told him about her job at the marketing company, how she'd worked there for 6 years, and finally felt like she was building something real. About her sister who lived 20 minutes away and had been her rock through the divorce. About the little apartment she'd just finished decorating exactly how she wanted it. What about you? She asked. What's waiting for you in Seattle? Alex talked about his job as a software engineer, how he'd been promoted to team leader just before the cruise, about his brother who was getting married next month and needed Alex to be his best man, about the house he'd bought after the divorce, the one he was still paying for, and trying to make feel like home. As they talked, the weight of their situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. They weren't just two people who lived far apart. They both had entire lives built in different places. Responsibilities, commitments, people who depended on them. Maybe we're being silly, she said quietly. Maybe this is just vacation magic that doesn't work in the real world. Don't say that, Alex said firmly, taking her hand again. This isn't just vacation magic. What I feel for you is real. What we have together is real. But is it real enough to change our whole lives for? She asked, voicing the question that was terrifying both of them. The party was winding down around them, people heading back to their rooms to pack for tomorrow's departure. In a few hours, they'd be back in Galveston, and this magical week would be over. I don't want to lose you, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to lose you either, she replied, tears starting to blur her vision. But I don't know how to make this work. The morning sun was streaming through her cabin window when her phone buzzed with a text that made her heart skip. Meet me at the rail where we first talked. I have something to show you. Alex. She threw on clothes and rushed to the deck, finding him standing at their special spot with his phone in his hand and the biggest grin she'd ever seen on his face. I couldn't sleep last night, he said without any greeting. So I spent the whole time on my laptop, and look what I found. He showed her his phone screen, and her jaw dropped. It was a job posting for a marketing manager position at a tech company in Seattle. The salary was better than what she made in Denver, and the job description sounded like it was written specifically for her skills. Alex, this is incredible, but I can't just apply for jobs in your city because we met on a cruise, she said, even though her heart was racing with possibility. Why not? He asked, stepping closer. People move for jobs all the time. People take chances on new opportunities. This doesn't have to be about me. This could be about you taking the next step in your career. Before she could answer, her own phone buzzed. It was her sister calling, probably to check on how the cruise went. But when she answered, her sister's voice was strange and excited. Sophia, you're not going to believe this, her sister said. Remember my friend Rachel, who works in Seattle? Well, her company just posted a job that sounds exactly like what you do, and she wants to know if you'd be interested. Her eyes went wide, and she looked at Alex, who was watching her with hopeful curiosity. What kind of job? She asked slowly. Marketing manager at some tech company. Great salary, amazing benefits, and Rachel says they're looking for someone with your exact experience. It was the same job, the same company. The universe was either playing a massive joke on her, or it was trying to tell her something important. After she hung up, Alex was grinning like he'd won the lottery. That was about the Seattle job, wasn't it? He said. How did you know? Because I've been thinking about this all wrong, he said, taking her hands. I was so worried about asking you to change your life for me that I forgot something important. You're not just changing your life for me. You're changing it for you. For us. For the possibility of something amazing. The ship was pulling into Galveston Harbor now, and all around them, people were taking final selfies and exchanging contact information with new friends. The magic of the cruise was ending, but maybe their story was just beginning. What if it doesn't work out? She asked, voicing her last fear. What if we try this and it's a disaster? Then we'll figure it out together, Alex said. But what if it's not a disaster? What if it's the best decision we ever make? An hour later, standing in the busy terminal with their luggage, Alex cupped her face in his hands. This isn't goodbye, he said firmly. No, she agreed, touching the anchor bracelet that had somehow become a symbol of hope instead of just a vacation souvenir. This is hello. As they kissed goodbye, or hello, she realized that sometimes the best adventures begin when you think the journey is over. Sometimes a stranger on deck becomes the person who shows you possibilities you never imagined. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to take the leap, one song really can change everything. 3 weeks later, she would apply for the job in Seattle. 2 months after that, she'd get it. But that morning in Galveston, all that mattered was the promise they'd made to try.